They said it was impossible, that the presidential palace in Ouagadougou was a fortress no man could breach, a place where the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, lived and worked under the watchful eyes of 200 elite bodyguards, hand-picked, fiercely loyal, armed to the teeth. And yet, one morning, he was found slumped at his desk, his pen still in hand, blood soaking the edge of a report titled Sovereignty Strategy 2026. Not a single gun was fired in defense. Not a single door was broken open. No alarms were triggered. The man who dared to stand against giants had fallen, silently, swiftly, and with a precision that chilled every soul in the nation. He had always said, "If I die, let it be on my feet, never on my knees." And so he did, at his desk, head held high, until the final second. Ibrahim Traoré wasn't born with a crown. He was born with fire. From a young age, he asked questions others were too afraid to utter. Why are foreign companies richer than the people who own the land? Why do French troops walk our streets, while our children walk barefoot to school? As a boy in Bondoukoui, he witnessed struggle. Not the kind told in history books, but the kind that sat at the dinner table in silence when there wasn't enough food to go around. He was sharp, curious, and above all, unshakable. He studied hard, eventually joining the military. But where others saw ranks, he saw a battlefield of ideas. As an artillery officer, he earned the respect of both his peers and superiors for his intellect and unwavering resolve. By 2022, with the nation gripped by insecurity and corruption, he became the face of a generation that demanded change. When he took power in a coup, many called him reckless. But the people, the ordinary, the ignored, the forgotten, they saw something else. A man who refused to bow, a leader who tore down foreign military bases and said, "We will defend our soil with our blood if we must." In the months that followed, he made enemies, not only in faraway boardrooms, but within his own corridors. He nationalized resources, restructured military intelligence, and aligned with neighbors who had also broken free from old colonial shadows. He was building something fragile but bold, a new Africa. And for that, he was marked. Power attracts pressure, and Traoré, in seeking independence, had pressed too many nerves. Behind smiles at diplomatic tables were knives being sharpened. French media began painting him as erratic. Western embassies tightened their rhetoric. Internally, elite businessmen whispered in lounges, generals shifted uncomfortably, and foreign contractors grew nervous about losing billions. He refused to let foreign troops dictate his country's defense. He canceled mining contracts that sent 90% of gold overseas. He gave speeches that didn't flatter donors. They shook them. His famous line, "We are not your puppets. Burkina Faso is not for sale," became a chant for young Africans and a threat to those profiting off the continent's silence. Even within the military, there were murmurs. Not everyone was ready to cut ties with the past. Some feared he moved too fast. Others resented the power he held. And somewhere, among the uniforms, among the codes and clearances, a crack began to form. It started with a note, slipped under his office door. No signature, no details, just a sentence. Not all oaths are eternal. Traoré didn't react publicly. But those close to him noticed a change. He shortened his meetings, canceled a foreign trip. He doubled his internal security checks. Still, he didn't hide. On the final day of his life, he walked the palace grounds, shook hands with staff, even shared coffee with his chief of protocol. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That evening, he met with his intelligence head. "Do you trust everyone in your shadow?" he asked cryptically. The officer didn't answer. That night, a shift in the guard rotation went unverified. A new team was inserted, faces supposedly vetted. Cameras at one entrance glitched for 13 minutes. The next morning, he entered his office at 7:10 a.m. His aide brought him tea. A handwritten memo on his desk read, "Future Projects, African Energy Corridor." He smiled, picked up his pen. At 7:43 a.m., the palace lights flickered. A muffled sound was heard. Not an explosion, not a gunshot. More like the release of pressure. A sharp, final exhale. At 7:44 a.m., his body was found, face forward. Pen still gripped. Pulse absent. The report soaked red beneath him. The 200 guards? Stunned, confused, helpless. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no camera footage. It was as if the air itself had turned against him. The autopsy revealed a rare neurotoxin, delivered not by bullet, but contact. Likely from the pen or the tea. Both had been removed before investigators arrived. Only the aide had access. He had vanished. 3 of the guards on duty were found sedated in a side room. One confessed he had been given orders by someone in uniform. But whose uniform? Traoré's office was a sanctum, a place he had handwritten letters to soldiers' families, corrected policy drafts, and once sketched a redesign for the national flag. It was there he died. Not in chaos, but in betrayal. Clean, calculated, without confrontation. When the news broke, silence fell across Burkina Faso. Then, rage. Thousands poured into the streets. Mothers wept. Veterans stood with fists raised. Teenagers wore T-shirts with his final speech printed in bold. "We will not be recolonized." The funeral was attended by leaders from Mali, Niger, Guinea, but many Western leaders did not show. 100 guards were suspended, interrogated. Some never returned. A handful of officers were quietly reassigned abroad. The aide who brought the tea? Never found. Conspiracy theories flourished. Foreign agencies were blamed. Internal betrayal suspected. The truth? Buried beneath layers of power and silence. But one thing echoed across the land. He had not died in vain.